Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Tonight's video features one 3-part deep web story sent in from viewers like yourselves. Many of you will believe that this is a fictional story. Some of you won't. I will let you guys be the judge of that. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. My Cousin and the Dark Web, Part 1. My mother and father were killed in a terrible car accident when I was 6 years old. Since then, I've been raised by my aunt and uncle in Texas along with my older cousin. It took me a while to adjust to this new arrangement, but in time I came to accept my aunt and uncle as parental figures. The person I was closest with was my cousin Lacey, but we were more like brother and sister. Living in Texas, we would often hunt and fish. My uncle taught both of us to be expert marksmen when it came to hog hunting. This comes in handy in the southern United States, where these wild pigs are considered pests due to their effect on the ecosystem. By the time I was 13, I had become a terrific shooter. My uncle sometimes joked that I could become a police sniper. Over time, my cousin and I both developed an interest in computers. This was in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the internet was a much newer phenomenon, and the idea of an information superhighway was very fascinating to both of us. Lacey is 2 years older than me, and thus graduated high school sooner. She was accepted to the University of Texas with a scholarship in computer sciences. As for me, my initial enthusiasm in computers has since waned into casual interest. My ultimate passion was sports journalism, and I would end up attending the University of Southern California with a scholarship in that field. In summer of 2006, I finished my sophomore year while Lacey had graduated from college and was working for a large technical firm in Houston. It was summer break and I hadn't seen her in a while, so I flew into town to visit for a few days. After spending a couple of hours catching up, she brought up a subject that had since come back to haunt me. She referred to it as the dark web. One of her coworkers had been bragging about spending time there, claiming to have purchased drugs on numerous occasions, and also watching some very hardcore videos that cannot be found anywhere on the regular internet. Lacey learned that this part of the web could be only accessed if you were a really good hacker. This predated Tor software by several years. Hacking had become a hobby of hers and she decided to check it out. I figured, what the hell, right? What could be so bad about this dark web? Well, plenty as it would turn out. As we went browsing, we both lost count of how many hitman advertisements, drug dealers and animal torture videos we saw. Some videos were live streams of what seemed to be genuine rapes, which caused both of us to cringe. When we even saw things like crush porn, apparently there are people out there who are sexually aroused at the sight of baby animals being crushed. Despite all these horrors, Lacey had a strange fascination with this place, but I had already lost interest. Eventually she came across a link entitled TJ's Horror Shop. It sounded corny as hell, but Lacey clicked on it anyway. She was greeted by a message informing her that a show was going to be taking place that night, but it was members only. The page gave her the option of registering, and she did just that. Southern Nerd 04 was a username she chose, if I remember correctly, and the website accepted her registration. She seemed eager to see what this was all about, but I felt very uneasy. From what I had seen so far, these people on the dark web are the type who hide their true colors, and I didn't want to see Lacey associating with people like that. After her registration went through, we were greeted by a digital clock, gradually counting down to the beginning of the live stream. It felt like an eternity, but the clock eventually reached 0, and the screen lit up. We saw a man wearing a skull mask, skeleton gloves, and dressed in leather. He was twiddling his fingers like Mr. Burns. We heard him speak in a deep, distorted voice. "Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to TJ's Horror Shop. For all the newcomers, it is my pleasure to welcome you into my house of horrors. It seemed like a little silly show, but given everything else we had seen on the dark web, I wasn't convinced that something truly sinister was out of the question. Tonight's first victim. 2 other men who were also wearing masks and dressed in leather dragged a third person in front of the camera. His hands were tied behind his back, and there was a bag over his head like he was some kind of hostage. Andrew Fleming of Charlotte, North Carolina, 43 years old, divorced father of son and daughter. He has been selected as the first victim of tonight's bloodbath. I began feeling sick to my stomach, and I noticed Lacey was beginning to look nervous. For those of you who are new, my viewers are the ones who get to pick how our victims meet their demise. Your username is selected at random. After your name is chosen, a box will appear on your screen to offer you several choices. The option you select is the method in which this poor bastard will die. One of the henchmen ripped the bag off the hostage's head. The man was sobbing in terror and was pathetically begging for his life. I sincerely hoped this was all just an act, but I was becoming more and more convinced otherwise. And now, let the selection process begin. On the left side of the screen, all of the usernames of those watching began to briefly flash up at random. Some kind of algorithm was using some sort of lottery system to select who would determine this man's fate. Eventually it settled on the username, Who Gives a Shit 771. Who Gives a Shit 771, one of our favorite guests. TJ shouted in glee. How will Mr. Fleming's life come to a horrifying end? Let's find out. A box appeared that showed the following options. A. Strangulation. B. Mutilation by chainsaw. C. Repeated gunshots. The user chose the third option. Very well. Let the carnage begin. One of the masked henchmen appeared from off-screen armed with a sawed-off shotgun. He aimed at the man's genitals and fired. Lacey and I both gasped in shock and horror while Mr. Fleming howled in extreme agony. The henchman lifted the man up and shot him in both kneecaps, causing him to drop back down to the floor and continue begging for mercy. His plea fell on deaf ears. The henchman then took out a 9mm pistol and emptied the entire clip into his back. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I looked away from the computer and threw up. I heard one more gunshot and the man's screaming stopped. What a delightfully gruesome display. Now on to our next guest. The other guys dragged another hostage into view, also bound with a bag over their head. The bag was removed to reveal a young woman not much older than me. Melissa Cartwright of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 24 years old and single. You will be our next victim. Now let's see who decides your fate. As before, the slot at the left of the screen began flashing usernames at random. Much to our horror, it settled on the username Lacey had chosen. Tears began welling up in her eyes. Lacey, shut this damn thing off, I shouted. Southern Nerd 04, a newcomer. We are happy to welcome you into our gruesome family. Now, you must choose how Miss Cartwright dies. The small box reappeared, but with several different options than before. Flaying, electrocution, or incineration. Lacey sat frozen. Lacey, get off this page now, I said with a mixture of fear and anger. Several minutes passed and TJ had grown impatient. Well, Southern Nerd, we're waiting. Lacey began frantically pressing buttons, hoping to escape from this awful place. If you don't choose in the next 20 seconds, you will be on our show next, TJ said menacingly. For a moment, Lacey appeared to be considering one of the murder options, but before she could choose, I ripped the power cord from its outlet, shut the damn computer off. Lacey broke down sobbing while I rushed over to comfort her. You don't think they'll find me, do you? She said fearfully. I don't know. I stayed with Lacey a few more days before flying back to Los Angeles. To be honest, I wanted classes to resume, but it was the middle of July. The whole situation with those wackos on the dark web appeared to have blown over. So I thought. Wednesday, July 19th, 2006, 10:47 p.m. I returned to my apartment and flopped down on my bed. I opened up my laptop and was met with a horrifying sight. My generic desktop background had been replaced with an image of a skull mask, the same type of mask worn by TJ and his cronies in that terrible live stream. A video box appeared and a video message began to play. Hello there, Jason. It's me, TJ. Shivers went down my spine. How did he learn my name? How the fuck did he hack into my laptop? I believe we have a hostage here that might be of interest to you. The camera angle changed to reveal. No, it can't be Lacey. She was bound and gagged and sobbing in the corner of the room where TJ was filming. There were cuts and bruises all over her face. Remember when I told your cousin here that she would be part of our next show? I'm a man of my word, Jason. She had a choice and she refused to answer the call, and now she will pay the ultimate price. He bent down and pet her hair very creepily. Or will she? I sat motionless, waiting to hear what he would say next. I decided to make things interesting for our next show. Your cousin will have a chance to survive if, and only if, you eliminate this man. A photograph of a middle-aged man appeared on my screen. Raymond Marshall, 53 years old, of Los Angeles, California. No particular reason why I chose this random person, except for the fact that he happens to live near you. And now, you have a simple choice. Will you murder one person to potentially save another? To be continued. My Cousin in the Dark Web, Part 2. I stared at my laptop, unable to move or speak. I wanted to save Lacey, but was it worth murdering another innocent person? 20 seconds, Jason. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I heard TJ taunting. Not much time to consider things. A very awful predicament to be in. TJ began to count down out loud. 10, 9, 8, 7. Yes, I will do it. I finally managed to force out. I regretted it almost instantly. So you've agreed to play along? Very well then. You have until the end of our show tonight to carry this out, which will be in a couple of hours. Be warned, one of my henchmen is currently in Los Angeles, and he's watching your every move. You know, in case you try to chicken out. Oh, and we're also monitoring your communications, so don't even think about warning your target or calling the police. I was trapped. There was no way out of this. I would have to become a murderer if Lacey was going to live, and the thought of it sickened me. If you haven't eliminated your target in 2 hours, my henchman will kill you. Shouldn't be a problem. Your cousin tells me you're an excellent shooter. TJ sent me his address. My target is a 15-minute drive away. A part of me wanted to commit suicide right then and there, but I knew that would be viewed as chickening out, and that would surely get Lacey killed. No, I had to do this. I I took a quick shower, then went out to my apartment building's parking garage, taking my laptop with me. I opened up the toolbox in the bed of my pickup truck, pulled out my assault rifle. I stared quietly at the weapon. I brought it with me when I drove out to California 2 years ago. I had used it many times for hog hunting, but I hadn't had much time for hunting much of anything since moving here. However, I had it cleaned recently and I had plenty of ammunition. I pulled the rifle out and tossed it into the back seat of the cab. "Put this on," I heard a voice say. Startled, I turned around and saw a tall man in a hooded sweatshirt wearing a skull mask. "Let me guess, you're the psychopath's puppet," I said sarcastically. "Put this on," he repeated in a more aggressive tone. He was holding a headset in his outstretched hand. I took it from him. This headset has a small camera planted inside. It will provide visual confirmation that you have carried out your task. Any attempt to tamper with it and I will kill you. They had all their bases covered. "Such a lovely crowd you hang out with," I said as I climbed into my truck. I saw him turn around and walk away. I couldn't see him or his vehicle anywhere in sight. With that, I started the ignition and began driving to the address TJ had sent me. All the while I saw a dark SUV with tinted windows tailing me the whole way. I tried to make out a license plate, but it was late at night and I couldn't see it. I eventually arrived at the street where my intended target lived. His house was directly across the street from a park. I decided it would be easier to hide from my target if I parked my truck over there. Meanwhile, the SUV that had been tailing me made a sharp U-turn, parked itself on the other side of the street. They weren't kidding that he was watching my every move. I opened up my laptop and waited for a video box to appear on the desktop, which is how TJ said he would contact me when they neared the end, their disgusting little show. At about 1:20 a.m., that's exactly what happened. "Welcome back again, local viewers. We've had quite an entertaining show so far tonight, but we've got quite a finale in store for you." He went off camera and dragged a woman in front, hands tied and mouth covered in duct tape. It was Lacey. "Will a man end one person's life to possibly save another? Let's find out, Los Angeles. Off we go." In the video box, the image of TJ was replaced with the camera feed from the headset his henchman had given to me earlier. I knew this was my cue to look over at my target's house across the street. I rolled my window down long enough for the muzzle to stick out. TJ's henchman got out of the SUV and walked up the driveway. Apparently the man I was assigned to kill was a night owl. All the lights in his house were on, and I swore I could hear his TV blaring. Maybe he lived alone. The masked man rang the doorbell and stepped off to the side of the house to hide. A man arrived at the door. It was him, my target. "Hello? Who's there?" I heard him shout. He took a couple steps outside. This was it, my moment of truth. I gathered every ounce of strength and fortitude I could muster and pulled the trigger. It was a direct hit right between the eyes. Raymond Marshall was dead before he hit the ground. The henchman emerged from the side of the house, walked up to the corpse and examined it. After doing so, he looked in my direction and gave some kind of hand gesture, presumably a signal of verification. Well, there you have it. Our friend did indeed have it in him to commit this murder. Since I'm in a generous mood, I will not kill his cousin, I heard TJ say on my laptop. The henchman got back into his SUV and drove off into the night. I watched as he drove away. I breathed a sigh of relief, but that relief was short-lived. I saw TJ walk off camera, and another one of his cronies walked into view armed with a shotgun. After a slight hesitation, he shot Lacey dead. I was in utter shock and disbelief. Even though I had done exactly what this monster had ordered me to do, my cousin was still murdered. I had committed an act I found to be reprehensible. It was all for nothing. I spent the next 2 days sobbing in despair in my bedroom. My uncle called and told me that he and my aunt had filed a missing persons report. They had tried to contact Lacey for several days, but couldn't get a hold of her. I feigned ignorance about what happened, because I just couldn't bring myself to tell them. I lay in my bed pondering what to do next. Those bastards had to be punished, but one doesn't simply maintain a murder show on the dark web without being masterful at covering their tracks. But even the most careful criminals slip up eventually. Then I remembered something. The headset I had worn that night, the one with the camera installed. Could it possibly still have footage on it? Maybe not. They probably deleted it by now. But I decided it was worth a shot. It's not like I had any other options. I hadn't taken computer lessons in a while, but I remembered the basic hacking tricks Lacey had taught me. I put the headset next to my laptop and went to work. It was a pain in the ass, but after several hours, I finally figured out how to hack into the camera. I expected to see nothing but a black screen, but to my surprise, I discovered a memory file in the camera. I clicked the file and yes, footage from the murder. They had slipped up and forgotten to delete the memory. That was the only starting point. I needed something else to go on. The henchman had his mask on the whole time, making it damn near impossible to identify him. The video reached the point where the henchman drove off and I noticed something. There was a short moment where the vehicle passed under a bright street lamp before disappearing into darkness. I saw a license plate, but the image quality was too blurry. I hacked in a little more to see if I could clear up the resolution. It worked. The picture was now clear. It was a Nevada state plate. I was one step closer. I typed the plate number into the database. The vehicle was a 2002 Toyota 4Runner, registered to a man named Zachary Parker of Reno, Nevada, about a 7-hour drive north. I was also able to acquire his address, and I was now on the trail of my cousin's killer. You're going down, TJ. I'll make sure of that, even if it kills me. To be continued. Part 3. The end. I packed food, rope, and duct tape, a handgun that I used for home defense, and a hunting knife that I had brought with me when I moved out here. Before departing LA, I stopped at a local store to pick up mace, a taser gun, and a tape recorder. I was loaded and prepared to exact revenge against these psychopaths. Told my roommates that I was taking a short trip and I'd be back in a few days. But truthfully, I had no idea if I would be coming back at all. These were some bad characters I was dealing with. I departed at noon, but heavy traffic added another hour to my trip. I reached Reno at 10 p.m. Since I lacked familiarity with the area, it took me another hour to find the address of the SUV driver. Eventually, I arrived in a quiet street in a nice-looking neighborhood. It was a single-story, medium-sized house similar in appearance to the one I had grown up in Texas. There it was in the driveway, the black Toyota 4Runner with that same license plate number. I was a nervous wreck, and it took me several deep breaths to calm myself down. Eventually, I worked up enough courage, grabbed my duffel bag, and stepped out of my truck. Slowly and quietly, I snuck up to the house, hoping against hope that nobody would notice me. Suddenly, the garage door began to open up. I ducked to the side of the house to keep myself out of sight. A man stepped out from the garage door and climbed into the SUV to start it up. But he wasn't going anywhere. He simply moved his vehicle into the garage before shutting it off. I heard the sound of the vehicle door open and shut again. This is where I took my chance. I bolted from my hiding spot and snuck into the garage at the corner, using the SUV as concealment. The man didn't notice me. He reclosed the garage door, shut off the light, and walked back inside. I stayed crouched in the corner for another half hour, believing he might be going to bed soon since it was late at night. Eventually, I made it to the door leading into the garage and opened it as quietly as I could. I had entered the laundry room and there was another door which I also opened. I was now in a dark hallway. At the end of the hall was a bedroom with the door partially open and a light on. I heard the sound of a shower shutting off. A few minutes later, I heard gargling sounds. These were the longest few minutes of my life as I waited for the right moment to strike. I slowly crept down the dark hallway, careful not to make a sound. I set down the duffel bag and pulled out my taser. I heard a slight creaking noise of the man sitting down on his bed. That's when I made my move. I burst through the bedroom door and shot the man in the chest with my taser. I made sure he was electrocuted for a good long time because I wanted him to suffer. Plus, I wanted to ensure that he wouldn't be able to fight back while I used my rope to bind him to his bedroom chair. Some time passed and he had recovered from his disorientation. It took him a moment to realize he was tied up. He began shaking frantically. Then he looked up at me and let out a gasp. "What? What the hell are you doing? How the fuck did you find me?" "You got sloppy," I said tersely. "But you never thought you'd see me again, did you?" He glared at me contemptuously. "Names and locations, dickface. I'm not telling you shit," he said defiantly. "Fine. I have plenty of time. In the meantime, see how tough you really are." He gulped nervously. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Zachary. Names." "Go fuck yourself," he shouted. I pulled out my handgun and shot him in his left kneecap. He screamed like a banshee and I couldn't help but feel satisfaction in watching him suffer. Not so tough when your victims fight back, are you? Start talking, asshole. Go to hell. Maybe I will, but I'm taking you bastards down with me. I then pulled out my pepper spray and blasted him squarely in the face, which led to more screaming. I made sure he got a large dosage. His eyes watered like a faucet and mucus began dripping out of his nose. "Talk! You're getting nothing from me." "All right then. Looks like I need to up the ante." I reached once more into the duffel bag and pulled out the hunting knife. "Let's see, your fingers, your toes, or your family jewels?" He stared at me silently, sweating profusely. "I'll settle with the jewels." I moved in closer and began to press the knife against his crotch. "All right, I'll talk." "That's more like it." He spilled the beans on the names and addresses of every one of his co-workers. He even gave the address of the abandoned warehouse where they hold their live streams. He said they were planning to have another show tomorrow night. As much as I hated this man, I didn't actually want to kill him. I would have preferred Zachary and his buddies to be kept alive to suffer in prison forever. But I also couldn't take the chance that he would warn his friends that I was trailing him. Pressed a gun to his temple and then I heard a whimper. But it wasn't coming from Zachary. It came from his bedroom closet. The hell was that? "It's nothing. There's nothing there." I opened the closet door and was heartbroken at what I saw. In the corner lay two children, a boy and a girl, tied up and gagged, cuts and bruises all over. They couldn't have been any older than 8 or 9. I dialed the police to report a kidnapping, then departed Zachary's house, unnoticed. With an arrest and detainment, he wasn't going to be able to warn TJ. I spent the better part of the following day staking out the abandoned warehouse Zachary told me about. I couldn't keep my mind focused on anything else except bringing these bastards down. Eventually the sun began to set, and I decided to make the move on the factory, whether TJ's and his cronies had arrived or not. I took the rear entrance, hoping it would draw less attention. I had my sniper's rifle, a flashlight, hunting knife, and a taser with me. If what I had seen from their live stream was any indication, they always came armed. I opened the back door slowly, but it creaked loudly. I chose to press forward despite my fears, my rifle pointed in front of me at all times. The factory was dim and quiet. Every little noise I heard made me shiver, but I wasn't going to turn back now. I had come too far down the tracks to abort at this point. There was a musty smell in the air, but it soon gave way to the smell of death. I recognized it instantly. Spend as much time hunting wild hogs as I have, and you'll become very familiar with the smell of decaying flesh. I traced the stench to the door at the end of the hallway. I opened it up and shined my flashlight into a pitch-black room. Sweeping the beam across, I saw a pile of dead bodies, some of whom were children. I then shone the light to the other side of the room, saw 3 people bound and gagged in a corner, a man and 2 women. Using my hunting knife, I cut the ropes binding them. "Are you a cop?" asked one of the female captives. "No, I'm just here to help," I replied. Then I pointed at the dead bodies. Yes, they hadn't gotten around to burying them yet. They're running some kind of sick internet show here. "And we were next in line," said the male captive. The other female hostage was too traumatized to speak. Can't say that I blame her. "You 3 get on out of here and head for the police station. We're shutting them down," I said. "You sure you'll be okay?" the male hostage asked. "I'll be fine. These guys aren't as tough as they look. Now go." Without missing the beat, the trio bolted out of there and out the rear entrance. I decided to leave the door to this room open, just to give them a shock when they arrived. I reached the main area of the factory. It was largely empty aside from a few desks, a computer with a webcam, and some extension cords. I noticed a step ladder leading up to the catwalk above. I decided this would be a good place to hide while I continued to wait for their arrival. The wait would not be very long. Less than 10 minutes later, 4 men entered the building through the front door. They weren't wearing their masks and they were all armed with shotguns as expected. The leader was tall, lean, and had blonde hair. "Where the hell is Zachary? Have you been able to get a hold of him yet?" the blonde-haired man shouted in frustration. I quickly deduced this was TJ. "I've been trying to get a hold of him all day, but what? I drove by his house earlier. The place was crawling with cops. I think one of the neighbors knew about those kidnapped children." TJ let out an exacerbated sigh. "Fine, we'll just have to do it without him. I should have known bringing him on board was a mistake. He always was a little careless." "Oh, you have no idea, TJ," I quietly muttered to myself from my hiding spot. TJ approached the desk with a computer and turned it on. "Bring out the hostages. We'll begin tonight's show with the next half hour." "You got it, boss," one of the other men said as he disappeared down the hall. I readied my hunting rifle from the perch on the catwalk. The moment of my confrontation was arriving. TJ fiddled around on the computer for a bit when he suddenly heard a loud scream. "The fuck was that?" TJ said. The henchman reappeared looking frantic and sweating. "The hostages, they're gone." "What do you mean they're gone?" TJ asked incredulously. "They're gone. The storage room door was open. I walked in and they were gone. The ropes had been cut." I saw TJ face-palming. "How the fuck did... Never mind. Those people somehow escaped. They're bringing the cops back here with them. We'd better leave now." I wasn't going to give them that chance. I aimed the rifle at the henchman's kneecap and fired. He yelped in pain and dropped to the floor. TJ and 2 remaining accomplices began frantically looking around, hoping to find the person who shot their friend. One of them walked directly in front of my sight line, and I had a clear shot in his back. I fired and stuck him in his spinal cord. He won't be walking for the rest of his life. Now it was down to 2. The last of TJ's cronies rushed to his friend's side, blasted him right in the knee. But this victory was short-lived. I heard a gunshot behind me. TJ had spotted me. I got up and ran as fast as I could across the catwalk. I heard another gunshot, and then another. He pumped the shotgun once more, but I heard a clicking noise when he pulled the trigger. Using this opportunity, I shot him twice in his left leg. He was down like the rest. I climbed down from the nearest ladder to get back to the floor level. TJ was groaning in pain and holding onto his leg. I decided to have a little more fun as I approached him. I fired another round, this time into his shoulder, took out the hunting knife and made an underhanded toss. It landed in his right leg. Finally, I tased the bastard and made him squirm and flop around like fish on dry land. "Oh, how the mighty have fallen," I said smugly. Once TJ regained his composure, he looked at me. "You? Surprised to see me, you son of a bitch? But wait, don't tell me, Zachary? Like you said, he was always a little careless, and this time it came back to bite you in the ass." TJ chuckled. "Okay, so now what? You'll be going to prison with the rest of us. Or have you forgotten the murder you committed on our behalf?" I angrily struck TJ in his chest cavity with the butt of my rifle. "On your behalf? You blackmailed me, dipshit. You said you would let Lacey free if I killed Raymond Marshall." "No, I said I might not kill her if you killed him. In case you've forgotten, it was my henchman who pulled the trigger on your cousin." "Close enough. These men follow your orders like blind sheep. Her blood is on your hands as well as the blood of Raymond Marshall. You know damn well I wasn't a willing participant." "You're right, you weren't. Marshall's death was my responsibility. But so what? You can't prove it. You're still going down with the rest of us." "Actually, I can." With that look, I took out my tape recorder and played back our entire conversation. "Face it, even a district attorney pressed charges against me. Do you really think any jury will vote to convict once they hear the whole story?" TJ was silent for a while. Eventually he spoke up. "Are you going to kill me?" As soon as he said those words, we heard sirens off in the distance. They were getting closer. I looked down on TJ. "No, I won't kill you. Your cellmates will do that for me." Hope you guys enjoyed this extra long, deep web horror story. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I want to throw a shout out and a thank you for the guy that submitted this story. You know who you are. Job well done. Stay sinful.